Have you noticed something missing in America's busiest tourist spots? Not the landmarks, not the hotels, not the food trucks or photo ops, but the tourists themselves. From San Francisco to Miami, from Yellowstone to Manhattan, there are fewer foreign visitors lining up at attractions, filling hotel lobbies, or browsing souvenir shops. And it's not just a seasonal dip. This is a deeper shift, one that began in Donald Trump's first presidency, but has now escalated sharply since his return to the White House in 2025. Back in 2016, the United States was the world's second most visited country, welcoming nearly 79 million international travelers. Only France had more. Tourists came for the culture, the natural beauty, the diversity, the iconic destinations, and for the feeling that America was a place worth experiencing. But fast forward to 2025, and the picture looks very different. Inbound travel is down, spending is down, enthusiasm is down. Even the perception of the U.S. as a welcoming destination has taken a serious hit. The country that once sold itself as the world's open road now feels to many like a roadblock. Some call it a slump, others call it a backlash. But whatever the label, this is not just a blip on the tourism radar. It's a systemic shift, one deeply linked to politics and in particular to the renewed presidency of Donald Trump. To understand how we got here, we have to look at what changed and when. During Trump's first term, cracks in America's image as a tourist-friendly nation began to form. The 2017 travel ban targeting several Muslim-majority countries sent shockwaves through the global tourism market. Visa rules tightened, entry procedures became more invasive. For many, the U.S. started to feel more like a fortress than a destination. Still, some of that damage was gradual. Tourism didn't collapse overnight. People held out hope that things might return to normal. But in 2025, with Trump's second term underway, that hope dimmed fast. Almost immediately after returning to office, Trump signed Executive Order 14,161, expanding travel restrictions to include 12 additional countries and imposing extra screening measures on 7 more. The targets were diverse, stretching across Africa, the Middle East, and the Caribbean. Though these countries accounted for a relatively small slice of the tourism market, the global reaction was anything but small. It wasn't about who was banned. It was about what the bans symbolized. Across Europe, Latin America, and Asia, headlines painted a sobering picture. America was closing its doors. Again, tourists from countries not even on the list began to worry. Will I be next? Will I be questioned, detained, or denied? That sense of unease didn't stay theoretical. The visa process became harder to navigate. Wait times stretched out. Requirements grew more confusing. There were reports of travelers being turned away at airports for vague or inconsistent reasons. Even frequent visitors, students, retirees, business people, began facing unexpected rejections or harsh scrutiny. At the same time, the administration launched a sweeping overhaul of U.S. trade policy. On April 2, 2025, Trump's White House declared Liberation Day and imposed massive tariffs, 10% minimum on nearly all imports, and as high as 50% on key goods like steel, aluminum, and vehicles. These tariffs hit closest to home in Canada, the EU, and Mexico, all key sources of inbound tourism. The message wasn't subtle. Economic allies were now targets. Trading partners became trade enemies. Unsurprisingly, consumer backlash followed. Across Canada and parts of Europe, boycott movements picked up steam. Tourists who might once have spent thousands on a U.S. vacation started looking elsewhere. Many used apps or websites that helped them avoid American products, services, and yes, destinations. It wasn't just policy, it was mood. America was starting to feel like a place that didn't want them. And travelers noticed, especially those from places with long-standing ties to the U.S. Take Germany, for instance. A country with strong transatlantic ties, a stable economy, and a tradition of sending tourists to the U.S. In just the first few months of Trump's second term, visits from Germany dropped 29%. Similar trends were seen from the UK, -14%, Australia, -7%, and Canada, where some border towns reported a 70% drop in traffic from the north. What triggered this steep decline? It wasn't just one policy or event, it was the cumulative effect of years of tension, made worse by a dramatic escalation in tone and enforcement. In early 2025, the U.S. imposed new screening procedures for tourists from over a dozen countries, including fingerprinting, device searches, and social media checks at the border. In one high-profile case, a well-known Australian journalist was detained, questioned for hours, had his phone searched, and was eventually sent home without explanation. Even Canadians, America's closest neighbors, were being turned away. Some travelers were told their ties to liberal organizations made them a risk. Others were flagged simply for crossing too frequently. These stories spread fast, and they weren't just horror stories, they became cautionary tales. As one Canadian traveler told CBC News, "It's not just about feeling unwelcome, it's about wondering if it's worth the risk. And then there's the economic cost, but we'll get to that soon. For now, what matters is this: tourists don't just bring money, they bring relationships. When people visit a country, they build trust, curiosity, and connection. But when they stay away, those ties fray, and the damage isn't just temporary, it's reputational." In the end, tourism is more than just photos and souvenirs. It's diplomacy in disguise. And America, for now, is losing that soft power, one missed flight, one canceled trip, and one bruised reputation at a time. Since Trump's return to office in early 2025, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, has dramatically tightened entry procedures. The popularity of secondary screenings, device searches, even blood draws, has surged. Travelers, regardless of citizenship or origin, report being questioned for hours, humiliated, or denied entry under inconsistent or vague pretexts. The new norm is unpredictability. One common complaint: phone searches and password demands, even from tourists. If a traveler refuses, entry is often denied on the spot. These are some of the documented cases involving citizens from trusted allies. German teens in Hawaii. On March 18, 2025, Charlotte Pohl, 19, and Maria Lepere, 18, two German high school graduates, landed in Honolulu with valid electronic system for travel authorization, ESTA, and onward flights. Having booked only the first 2 nights of accommodation and mentioning occasional online freelance work, they were deemed suspicious by CBP agents. They were subjected to body scans, strip-searched, forced to wear prison uniforms, held overnight on moldy mattresses in a federal detention cell, and deported the following day via Tokyo, Qatar, and Frankfurt. The teens described the ordeal as humiliating and scary, and said they felt powerless and small. German authorities later reminded citizens that ESTA does not guarantee entry. German tattoo artist Jessica Brosch. Jessica Brosch, a Berlin-based tattoo artist, crossed from Tijuana into San Diego in late January 2025 with valid ESTA status and a return flight. She was immediately detained as she allegedly planned to work in exchange for clothes on a tattoo project with a friend. Brosch spent over 6 weeks in Otay Mesa ICE detention, including 8 days in solitary confinement. Her detention continued long past the expected return date, with officials citing a violation of the terms and conditions of her admission. Supporters warned foreign tourists that ICE could arrest anyone. The German consulate intervened, but Brosch described the experience as a horror movie. European green card holder in Boston. A legal German green card holder, returning to Logan Airport from Luxembourg, was detained, stripped naked, violently interrogated, and forced into a cold shower. His green card had been flagged despite a clean record. His family reported he had minimal access to food or water during the ordeal, which lasted days. This case underscores how even permanent U.S. residents can face unpredictable and humiliating treatment. Australian visitor Jonathan. An Australian male entered the U.S. on a valid work visa to attend a family memorial in Texas. Yet CBP detained him, insulted him, confiscated his belongings, denied access to legal counsel, abruptly canceled his visa, deported him, and imposed a 5-year ban. Authorities offered no clear explanation or justification. Former officer Nikki Sorokas. Ex-NSW police officer Nikki Sorokas traveled to Hawaii to visit her U.S. Army lieutenant husband. Although previously admitted via ESTA, CBP flagged her for suspicious luggage and travel history. She endured strip and cavity searches, a DNA swab, invasive questioning about tattoos and alleged gang ties, physical rough handling, denial of communication, and overnight detention in a federal jail. She was deported uncharged. Sorokas declared she would never return to the U.S. and criticized DHS's public statements as ridiculous and twisted. Norwegian tourist Mads Mikkelsen. At Newark Airport on June 11th, a 21-year-old Norwegian tourist, also named Mads Mikkelsen, was detained for 5 hours. After being pressured to unlock his phone, agents discovered a satirical meme of VP J.D. Vance and a photo of a homemade wooden pipe. Though CBP later claimed admission was denied due to admitted cannabis use, Mickelson experienced fingerprinting, blood sampling, device seizure, luggage ransack, false paperwork labeling his passport Spanish, and deportation. He describes the episode as extremely violating and traumatic. Canadian Jasmine Mooney. Working on a U.S. work visa, Jasmine Mooney attempted a renewal crossing in San Diego. Instead, she was detained by ICE for 12 days in poor conditions, without formal charges and with limited communication. Her case drew criticism from Canadian officials and triggered diplomatic discomfort over CBP's treatment of even long-term and professional visitors. These cases involve travelers from Germany, Norway, Australia, and Canada, nations with long-standing diplomatic and tourism ties to the U.S. despite valid entry documents and legal status. These visitors faced humiliating searches, long detentions, deportations, bans, and official gaslighting. Collectively, these incidents have contributed to a crisis of trust in American hospitality, discouraging not just individuals, but whole national demographics from considering the U.S. a welcoming destination. Real testimonies and social media backlash. On subreddits like Tourism Hell, dozens of users share stories of phone seizures, invasive questioning, and disturbing disappearances into holding rooms. People being denied entry and detained for weeks or months. Tourists landing in ICE detention. They can search your phone, ask for passwords. If you refuse, they deny you. A Canadian traveler describes, "We canceled our trip. We will be traveling somewhere we feel we are welcomed." German forums are rife with desperate warnings. Many say they won't visit the U.S. for a long time, due to fear of detention even over minor visa or paperwork issues. International governments responded quickly. Germany updated its travel advice, stressing that even minor infractions or overstaying could result in arrest or deportation. The Finnish government similarly cautioned transgender and non-binary travelers due to a rule recognizing only two sexes. Industry watchers like David Bierman, American Friends Service Committee, argue these cases reflect a hostile atmosphere, not standard immigration procedure. Tourism experts like Adam Sachs, Tourism Economics, warned that destinations thrive on predictability and goodwill, both of which have crumbled under heightened scrutiny, leading to tens of billions in lost revenue. Neri Kara Silliman, Oxford University, noted, "Even if you get a visa, you have the risk of being detained or denied. Travelers now view entering the U.S. as too difficult." While direct quotes from current CBP agents are scarce, former customs professionals and tourism image specialists express alarm. Tourism and More notes that previous training for hospitality-oriented border interactions has largely disappeared after decades of turnover, leading to a more bureaucratic and adversarial culture among officers at major airports. Tourism observers argue that episodes like detention for memes or pet-sitting jobs signal breach of reasonable expectation. Tourist morale is collapsing, and social media now amplifies deterrence more than welcome. The hospitality crisis isn't about anecdotal policy hiccups, it's a pattern. Detainees come from friendly countries, they hold valid documents, they face humiliating treatment. The result isn't just lost tourism dollars, but a fractured reputation. A tourist doesn't just buy a ticket, they place trust. When they leave fearing detention or deportation, that trust breaks. And recovering it will take far more than apologies. It will require genuine policy reform and a reinvention of the American welcome. While the stories of mistreated travelers made headlines and went viral, the impact rippled far beyond individual experiences. As tourism declined, entire sectors of the American economy, especially those that rely on international travelers, started to feel the pain. The numbers don't lie. According to a June 2025 report by the U.S. Travel Association, international arrivals to the United States fell 11.8% in the first year of Trump's second term, nearly 6 million fewer visitors than forecasted. This decline wiped out $19.4 billion in potential revenue, especially hurting cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Orlando, which heavily depend on foreign tourists. In contrast, travel to Canada, Mexico, and the European Union rose during the same period, reversing the pre-2016 trend when the U.S. was the world's top travel destination. The so-called Trump slump from his first presidency had returned, and now with a vengeance. Top European and Canadian airlines also reported a 15 to 22% drop in U.S.-bound bookings in Q1 2025 compared to the previous year. Many cited increased scrutiny at customs and safety concerns among travelers as primary reasons. Tourism-dependent businesses suffer. From hotels and resorts to souvenir shops and tour operators, businesses in major cities and rural destinations alike saw revenue shrink. Las Vegas hotels reported occupancy drops of 7%. Miami's hospitality sector lost an estimated $380 million, and San Francisco's Chinatown saw a 30% decline in international foot traffic. Sandy Liang, owner of a gift shop in San Francisco. We used to have buses full of Europeans and Australians. Now it's mostly locals. The charm of our city hasn't changed, but how visitors are treated at the border, that changed everything. In New York City, where international travelers normally spend more than 3 times what domestic travelers do, museums, theaters, and luxury retailers all reported declines in revenue. Hotel industry sounds the alarm. The American Hotel and Lodging Association warned in early 2025 that up to 150,000 tourism-related jobs were at risk if trends continued. Smaller hotels near national parks and border towns were especially affected. In towns like Niagara Falls, New York side, hoteliers report occupancy rates dropping below 60%, while Canadian counterparts just across the river see booming business. Bill Hartman, hotel manager in Buffalo, New York. We have better views, better prices, and we're losing to Canada. Why? Because travelers feel more welcome there. That's it. That's the whole story. Ripple effects through the supply chain. Tourism isn't just about plane tickets and hotels. It feeds into a complex web of economic activity: restaurants, rideshares, artists, local guides, even gas stations and grocery stores. In 2025, retail spending by international tourists dropped 14.6%, leaving Main Street America struggling even as Wall Street celebrated tariff-fueled trade surpluses. Canadian and European travel agencies started explicitly warning customers about increased risk when traveling to the U.S. In Germany, the Association of Tour Operators issued a rare statement in April 2025. We cannot recommend travel to the U.S. until issues at customs and border protection are addressed. Too many of our clients report traumatic or unjust experiences. Meanwhile, European influencers and travel bloggers with millions of followers began promoting U.S. alternatives, like Iceland, Portugal, Japan, and yes, Canada, as better destinations for safety, hospitality, and cultural exchange. Perhaps most damaging of all is the erosion of trust. Surveys conducted by Skyscanner and Booking.com revealed that 41% of travelers from Western Europe and Canada who had previously visited the U.S. said they were unlikely or very unlikely to return under current travel policies. Dr. Helena Weiss, global tourism expert. You don't just lose a visitor. You lose the stories they would have told, the friends they would have brought next time, and the goodwill they spread. America has turned a moment of inconvenience into a long-term crisis. For decades, Canadian tourists played a silent but vital role in sustaining local economies across the northern United States. Whether it was weekend shopping trips, family road vacations, or cross-border medical visits, Canadians brought billions of dollars into small towns and major cities alike. But that steady stream has slowed and in some places nearly vanished. Since Trump's return to power, diplomatic tensions between the U.S. and Canada have taken a marked turn for the worse. Unlike previous disagreements over trade or defense that were handled with relative discretion, Trump's renewed rhetoric has been openly hostile, labeling Canada as a freeloader and threatening to impose tariffs even on traditionally exempt sectors. This political chill has translated directly into the way ordinary Canadians feel about visiting their southern neighbor. We used to head to Buffalo every few weekends, says Michelle R. from Toronto. Now, with all the horror stories about how people are treated at the border, we just shop locally or online. The numbers say it all. According to the U.S. National Travel and Tourism Office, travel from Canada to the U.S. dropped by 17% in the first 18 months of Trump's second term. At land borders, the decline was even sharper, over 23% at some key crossings in Michigan, New York, and North Dakota. Meanwhile, Greyhound Canada reports that its cross-border services have seen a 20% reduction in ridership, with several routes running at a loss or being canceled outright. Airlines are also taking a hit. WestJet and Air Canada quietly reduced flights to mid-sized U.S. cities like Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Phoenix due to weakening demand. The Airport Authority in Calgary noted a 12% decline in U.S.-bound international departures between 2024 and 2025. Border-adjacent shopping centers once counted on Canadian visitors for over half their weekend business. But today, places like the Niagara Falls Outlet Collection, the fashion outlets of Niagara Falls, NY, and Crossiron Mills in Montana report foot traffic is down dramatically. One mall manager in Buffalo stated, "Canadians used to cross by the busload. Now, even with discounts, they're just not coming. It's not just about prices anymore, it's about feeling welcome. Not just politics, it's the experience." Beyond political rhetoric, many Canadians report feeling targeted or disrespected during border crossings. A family from Winnipeg was held for 2 hours and questioned about their finances while trying to attend a hockey game in Minnesota. A Vancouver couple flying to Las Vegas for a wedding had their ESTA applications revoked at the airport with no explanation and were turned back mid-check-in. In online forums like Canada Travel and TripAdvisor, Canadian users share stories of sudden visa revocations, confiscated phones, and aggressive questioning, even for routine visits. "It used to feel like crossing into a friendly neighbor," wrote one user. "Now it feels like entering a fortress where you're guilty until proven innocent." Voices from the Canadian side. "It's not worth the anxiety." Luc Tremblay, Montreal. "My daughter got detained at the Vermont border for 3 hours. She's 19, Paula G., Ottawa. I canceled a fishing trip to Minnesota. We went to BC instead, Glen B., Calgary. We're treated like potential threats, not tourists." Anonymous, Toronto. Even Canadian MPs have weighed in. MP Nathaniel Erskine Smith called the border atmosphere increasingly hostile, while others have urged Canadians to exercise caution when traveling to the U.S. The long-term damage. Canada has long been the United States' #1 source of international visitors. But now, a growing segment of Canadians say they are not just staying away temporarily. They're rethinking the U.S. as a destination altogether. Travel publications such as the Globe and Mail's travel section and CBC's Consumer Watchdog have both highlighted rising anxiety among travelers, listing everything from unexpected detentions to surprise deportations, especially for dual nationals, activists, and those with Middle Eastern surnames. "The brand of American hospitality has been badly tarnished," says Lisa K. Tremblay, a travel columnist based in Montreal. "People associate the U.S. with unpredictability, surveillance, and fear. That used to be unthinkable." For generations, a trip to the United States was considered a dream vacation for millions of Europeans. From the neon lights of New York to the red canyons of Arizona, the U.S. promised diversity, adventure, and culture on a scale few countries could match. But that dream is fading. Since Trump's return to power, European travelers are thinking twice, many for the first time in decades. Let's start with the numbers. According to the U.S. National Travel and Tourism Office, tourism from Europe has dropped sharply over the past 18 months. Visits from the United Kingdom, traditionally the largest source of European tourists, are down 26%. From Germany, the drop is 28%. France has seen a 22% reduction in outbound travel to the U.S. And from Spain, where trips to the U.S. were booming just 5 years ago, numbers have plummeted by 35%. That decline represents millions of lost visitors and billions in lost revenue for airlines, hotels, restaurants, and local economies across the United States. What happened? European newspapers and travel outlets aren't mincing words. In the UK, The Guardian published a piece titled "Why I Cancelled My Trip to America," featuring first-person accounts of travelers deterred by safety fears and political tension. In France, Le Monde described the current U.S. political climate as unstable and hostile, and warned that travelers might encounter sudden visa issues, customs delays, or even ideological screenings. Die Zeit, one of Germany's most respected newspapers, ran a special report on growing European unease with U.S. gun culture, citing polls showing that 68% of Germans now feel unsafe visiting American cities. And Spain's El País noted that the United States no longer feels like a holiday, it feels like a risk. Where are they going instead? The shift isn't just theoretical, it's visible in booking data across Europe. Japan has seen a 19% surge in European tourists, many of them first-time visitors. Mexico has experienced record arrivals from Germany and France, especially to beach destinations like Cancun and Los Cabos. And yes, Canada is benefiting too, with direct flights from London, Paris, and Frankfurt to Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal filling up faster than ever. Canada feels like the America we used to love, just without the drama, said one British travel blogger with over 300,000 followers. Her posts about choosing Banff over Yellowstone sparked thousands of comments, many echoing her sentiments. So what's driving this retreat from America? The reasons go far beyond politics. 1. Fear of gun violence. Mass shootings dominate international headlines. In 2025 alone, over 300 mass shooting incidents were reported in the U.S. by mid-year. For many Europeans, who are used to strict gun laws, the idea of casually walking through cities where civilians carry weapons is unthinkable. We've had clients specifically ask if it's safe to go to a shopping mall in Florida, says a travel agent in Berlin. They're not being paranoid, they're just being realistic. 2. Border anxiety. Even for Europeans with valid visas or passports, U.S. border control has become unpredictable. There are growing reports of travelers being detained, interrogated, or denied entry for unclear reasons. Travel agencies now warn clients that a paid-for vacation is not a guarantee of admission. 3. Moral and cultural disconnect. Many Europeans feel alienated by what they see as the U.S.'s direction on social issues. The rollback of abortion rights, attacks on LGBTQ+ communities, book bans, and the rise of religious nationalism have left many feeling that the country no longer shares their values. My teenage daughter wanted to see New York, says a French mother from Lyon. But after reading about protests outside schools and anti-LGBT laws, I asked her, what if we went to Montreal instead? At its core, travel is about emotion. It's about how a place makes you feel. And today, for many Europeans, the U.S. doesn't feel like a vacation. It feels like stepping into a culture war. There's a growing perception that America is angry, divided, and unsafe. That even if you're just there to sightsee, you might get caught in something bigger than you expected. And perhaps most telling, it's not just activists or ideologues who are turning away. It's families, retirees, first-time travelers. People who used to dream of Route 66 or Disneyland are now dreaming of Tokyo, Lisbon, or the Canadian Rockies. Long-term impact. The consequences for American tourism are profound. Europe once accounted for over 20% of all international arrivals to the U.S. That base is now eroding. And with each year that passes, alternative destinations become the new normal for millions. Once people discover they can get better service, feel safer, and be treated with more respect elsewhere, why go back, asks travel analyst Isabel Kramer in Frankfurt. The U.S. isn't the default choice anymore. Final thought. The United States once symbolized freedom, excitement, and possibility. But for many Europeans, it now represents risk, unpredictability, and moral dissonance. And unless something changes, not just in policy but in perception, this downward trend may not be a pause. It may be the new reality. What if I told you millions of tourists are skipping the United States, and some states are paying the price more than others? Well, that's exactly what's happening right now. And stick around because you won't believe which state is suffering the most. Let's dive in. In 2025, U.S. tourism numbers were supposed to bounce back big time. But instead, international arrivals have dropped nearly 10%, costing the country up to $12.5 billion in lost spending. And it's not random. Most of that decline is coming from some of America's closest friends, Canada and Europe. Trips from Canada are down by as much as 20% in some places. From Western Europe, it's nearly 17%. So, what's going on? A lot of it comes down to politics. Travel bans, new tariffs, stricter border controls, and growing tensions with allies, all adding fuel to what some are calling a tourism boycott. Now let's break down which U.S. states are feeling the heat the most, from least to worst hit. Number 6, Michigan. Michigan, known for its lakes, forests, and friendly Midwestern charm, is also known for its proximity to Canada, and that's become a problem. Canadian car crossings into Michigan are down nearly 24%, with flights to cities like Detroit and Grand Rapids also seeing noticeable drops. For places like Mackinac Island, which heavily relies on Canadian visitors during the summer months, it's been tough. Hotel bookings are down and some businesses are scaling back operations. Local shop owner Linda Carter put it bluntly, "We count on those folks from Ontario to keep the lights on. Without them, it's a ghost town some weekends." Tourist towns along the border, especially those offering fishing trips, lake getaways, and small town shopping, are seeing empty parking lots and fewer reservations. Number 5. New York State, outside of New York City. The same story applies here. Border towns like Niagara Falls, Buffalo, and even smaller communities along the Great Lakes depend heavily on Canadian visitors, especially for quick getaways, shopping trips, and sightseeing. But with crossings down, many local businesses are struggling to stay afloat. Niagara Falls has seen hotel occupancy rates dip significantly, and some attractions have scaled back operating hours due to low foot traffic. A local tour guide, Mark Thompson, shared his frustration. Summer used to be packed with Canadians, families, bus tours, honeymooners. Now we're lucky if we see half that. The decline in visitors also means less tax revenue for these communities, impacting everything from infrastructure to public services. Number 4. Florida. Florida has always been a hotspot for Canadian snowbirds. Over 3 million Canadians visit the state each year, or at least they used to. In 2025, some areas, particularly along the Gulf Coast and in parts of South Florida, are reporting hotel reservations down by 60% compared to previous years. That's not just empty beaches, it's a major economic blow to small towns and tourism-reliant cities. Fort Lauderdale and Naples have both seen significant declines in Canadian visitors, along with noticeable drops from European countries like the UK and Germany, which traditionally make up a big slice of Florida's international tourism. Local restaurant owner Carlos Alvarez explained, "It's not just the hotels. When tourists stop coming, the whole economy feels it. We've cut staff, cut hours. It's survival mode." Theme parks in Orlando are still seeing decent domestic numbers, but the international crowd, especially from Europe, has visibly thinned. Number 3. California. The Golden State is a top destination for both Canadians and Europeans, with iconic cities, national parks, beaches, and of course, wine country. But with a 20% drop in Canadian visitors, and sharp declines from European tourists, particularly from the UK, Germany, and France, places like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Napa Valley are all feeling the pinch. Hotel bookings in San Francisco's popular Fisherman's Wharf area are down, and tour operators report smaller groups and canceled reservations. The California Travel Association has even launched a campaign called California Loves Canada to try to reassure visitors. Sarah Mitchell, a hotel manager in Santa Monica, explained, "We used to see Europeans year-round, especially in the spring and summer. Now it's noticeably quieter, and the parking lots have more empty spaces than usual." Wine tours in Napa and Sonoma have also seen fewer international bookings, impacting local guides, transport companies, and countless small businesses. Number 2. Nevada, Las Vegas. What happens in Vegas apparently isn't happening as much these days. Tourism officials report up to 20% fewer Canadian visitors, and the decline from Europe is adding to the slump, especially among high-spending tourists from the UK, Germany, and France. Casinos, hotels, restaurants, they're all laying off staff, cutting hours, and tightening belts. The impact stretches beyond the Strip, affecting entertainment venues, tour companies, and even the famous wedding chapels. Marlene Foster, who works in a popular Vegas casino, described the mood. "There's fewer people gambling, fewer shows selling out, and we all feel it in our paychecks. Vegas never sleeps, but some of its hotel rooms sure are empty." And number 1, New York City. Now technically, New York City isn't a state, but let's be honest, when it comes to tourism, the Big Apple is in a league of its own. It's one of the most visited places in the entire country, drawing millions of international tourists every year, or at least it used to. City officials have slashed their visitor projections by 3 million people, citing sharp declines from both Canada and Europe. European visitors from countries like the UK, Germany, France, and Italy make up a massive portion of NYC's international tourism, but now fewer of them are walking through Times Square or standing in line at the Empire State Building. Broadway ticket sales are down, museums are reporting lighter crowds, and even the city's famous walking tours are running at half capacity. Emily Russo, a tour guide in Manhattan, summed it up. "We used to run 3-4 tours a day, now we're lucky if we book 2. That means fewer people on Broadway, fewer selfies in Times Square, and well, fewer slices of overpriced pizza being sold." So what does all this mean? It means tourism isn't just about vacations, it's jobs, small businesses, and local economies. And right now, policies and political tensions are keeping visitors, and their wallets, away. Some states like California and New York are launching campaigns to repair the damage, but for now the numbers don't lie. Tourism is down. The big question is, will the trend reverse, or is this just the price of politics?